be seen. And I also want to shout out my friend Shauna Mead, who is with us today. I see Shauna got my newsletter and joined us. Hey, Shauna, a very gifted, wonderful woman who educates everyone from children all the way to adults. And she's raised 4 amazing kids. And so I'm waiting on her book to come out. But Shauna, thank you for joining us today. I also want to just appreciate everyone who is on the call, who is watching this at your own pace via our YouTube channel. Welcome to the IEA Great Lakes region, or anywhere near a lake, as we like to call ourselves. We are the regional board of the International Enneagram Association, and we just love digging into how we can meet ourselves, know ourselves, and love ourselves more through the wisdom and the power of the Enneagram. We have tons of wealth and wisdom to share with you every month via our Zoomcast, our Midday Cafe. And so we welcome you to join us. We welcome you to check out our newsletter that I'm going to throw in the chat here. The newsletter comes out every month, and it also has a link to past Midday Cafe sessions. And so we've had some amazing, brilliant, innovative thought leaders in the diverging areas of neuroscience, psychology, relationships theory, and all kinds of system theory. And so we have so many different voices represented in our midday cafes. And so do yourself a favor. It'll be like going to a little baby Enneagram conference if you just scroll through the videos. So I'm gonna drop those links in the chat as I'm talking. I also want to invite you to check out some of the events that our board is having. We have some brilliant minds that are part of our Great Lakes region, or anywhere with a lake regional board. And so our resident expert on the Enneagram, who we'll be hearing from in a little bit, Reverend Clare and Scott Loughrige, they're having an Enneagram Harmony Retreat, online or in person, October 2nd, from 9 to 1, October 2nd. And then it's from 9 a.m. to, it looks like 4 p.m. And so click that link here that I just dropped in the chat for more information about that. Rosemary Hurwitz, who's also a board member, who is just full of life, full of pizzazz, full of energy and love, will be leading her bi-weekly Enneagram online group. So check out that group, or go to that email, rosepetalmusic@gmail.com, to request more information. Dr. Lori Tate is leading a men's Enneagram group spiritual direction. So that should be very, very interesting from the male perspective, to receive guidance via the Enneagram. It'll be 5 Zoom sessions between September 22nd and May 12th. There's a link to click and register there. Also want to invite you to join us for my next workshop. I'm having a workshop that's kind of a refresher or an orientation for some to just leverage the power of the Enneagram and assist with some clarity and some communication via my curriculum, Confusion and Clarity. That's going to be on September the 29th. So click that little flyer and check out that email if you want some more information. So the last thing I want to share with you is we also have that YouTube channel, and the YouTube channel link is in our e-news, our Enneagram news, and I've also dropped it here in the chat. So if you want to check out some of our past Midday Cafe Zoomcasts, that's there for you as well. This session is being recorded. I also want to remind you that when we record the sessions, the chat transcript is also downloaded, including the messages that we send to the group and the messages that we send directly to one another. So be mindful as we're sending messages that that is going to be downloaded and saved. Keep your cameras on if you would like to. If you need a camera off day, we also support that, and we support you in that. I also want to encourage you to keep your mic muted unless you have a question. Engage our chat or our raise hand feature. We'll be watching the chat. We'll be watching those raised hands, and we are eager to hear your questions, your contributions, and your insights today. So with that being said, I am so excited to introduce our fearless leader. She's the president of our board. She is a reverend, but she's one of those real reverends that gets into trouble for actually teaching sacred principles for practical application in your life. And so the transformation that she facilitates sometimes is expansive and can get some folks into that good kind of trouble, you know? And so I'm very excited to introduce my teacher and my friend, Reverend Clare Loughrige, who with her husband, Scott, and with the Calhouns has written a beautiful book. And we'll be talking a little bit about their new book, as well as her expertise and her insight on how to approach the harmony triads. So just join me in welcoming Reverend Clare Loughrige.
Well, thanks, Danielle. I'm glad to be among friends here, and I'm glad to answer any questions that any of you have today. And I think one of the things that I love about being 60 on my next birthday is I can say, I don't know, but I'll check on that and see if I can find a really smart person. So happy to be among so many lifelong learners. And so Danielle, whatever you want to know today, just ask away, and then we'll turn it over to others as well.
Absolutely. So the first thing I want to know is a little bit of a personal question. I want to get in your business a little bit.
All right.
Tell me about how the Enneagram and the harmony triads has opened up personal transformation for you. And then the second part of that question is, how do you think you may have come to this transformation if you had not intersected with the Enneagram? What would be the difference?
Well, there's something I don't know, but I could ask a couple of my friends on the call, what do you think might happen to me? But one of the things that was a great grace for me was some of the failures that I've experienced in life, whether they were, flat out failures, turning in a manuscript and not having that book accepted, whether it was, the pain we lived in our own personal lives, Scott and I, with my daughter's addiction, which her story is public. In fact, she wrote a fabulous newsletter for Michigan State University, where she graduated with her degree in public health. But any of you who have had difficulty in your lives, whether it was failure you could directly attribute to your own false self patterns, your own defense mechanisms, the way you got in your own way, my false self as a 3 is deceit toward the self. So there were many years where I had no recognition of my inability to, say no. I thought my human capacity was far more than it was. And it was a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis when I was 40 years old that made me realize that I was living beyond my human limits.
Was it like an alarm going off all of a sudden while you were busy talking?
Yeah, and it's Rosemary. So I don't know if you want to call her, Danielle. She might be having a hard time getting in or something. But anyway, when I was diagnosed with MS at 40, I had the gift of being taken to a retreat with Ruth Haley Barton, and the first spiritual invitation was to rest, to go lay down, put your head on the pillow, sink into it. And I thought, you've got to be kidding me. Who thinks rest is a spiritual discipline? You rest when you die. Right now, you got to work in the vineyard because the sun is going down. Night is coming when no person can work. And so I felt like when you die, God says, enter your rest. And until then, you better work. And so that was a strange invitation. And it took me a long time to find refuge in the pillow. And after 5 years of practicing in that way, once a quarter, 2.5 days, solitude, silence, stillness, and not being on or performing or getting applauded or recognized for failure, but alone in my own cell, I discovered that I was better in my body. I had no more exacerbations. Prior to that, I had diplopia and numb limbs and etc. And it looked like I was moving in a good direction. And at 13 years, they actually said to me that I had no lesions on my brain or my spine. So it was a letting go of workaholism. It was a welcoming in the beauty of the 9, which said, don't do what Dr. Wagner says 3s do, work like hell and advertise. But you could actually welcome the 9 in and say, work and maybe even narcotize. And some people might say, well, that's no good. Well, it depends on what we're talking about. If there's actually ways that you can let go of the triggers of feeling like you need to prove yourself as a 3 and move away from the work and detach from it in a way that is pretty nirvana-ish. Anyway, so
let me ask you this: if you had not had the map of human behavior right in front of you to contextualize the dynamic movement that we experience from type to types, honestly, Claire, how long do you think it would have taken you to fall into that rhythm based on medical expertise and, just seeking information otherwise?
Well, I will say that I have a couple of family members that also have MS, and they have really suffered in ways that, I am not suffering. And I think I would have just said, well, I married my 9. I don't need to, move away from life and allow rest to be a part of my life. This is who I am. This is me, and better take me or leave me. And so super grateful for the map that has given me a way to see how to let go of the ways I was wounding my life.
So I love that. I love what it sounds like to me is that you tapped into the efficiency of the type 3 and really decided to allow the spirit to guide you into this space of rest that expedited your healing. And that's one of my favorite things about the Enneagram, is that it gives us a trailhead. It gives us a starting point, and it gives us a map to understand where we are in order to begin that journey of unearthing the beautiful view that awaits us as we, make this kind of trek through our lives, this view of our essence, view of our true self, that our personality is coming forward to protect, to hide, to survive, right? And so you talk in your book about music as a metaphor. And if anybody's ever taken a Clare Loughrige workshop or retreat or certification, you're not going to get through not 1 hour without a song, right? She's like that old OJ song, I love music, any kind of music. And so tell me why music and harmony is such an appropriate metaphor for what it means to understand our full self through the harmony triads.
Yeah, well, that's right. I think when we look at harmony, we would say then we're not counting on ourselves to bring the beauty to the world, but we're actually joining our voices. And so, we can have our solo agenda, we can have our own playlist, or we can actually welcome more. And so harmony is just the way I was hardwired to sing from, I love you, a bushel and a peck, when I was a little kid. And so, yeah, it's all in there.
Yeah. And I love how my friend, who is a music theory teacher and a vocal coach, he talks about the difference between dissonance and resonance regarding harmony. And he said that one of the reasons why we all love harmony, we all love when the choir joins in, or we love those harmonious parts of the song, is because we enjoy hearing 2 different voices find resonance on 2 different octaves. Like the human brain is hardwired to think that that is a beautiful thing. And so that's resonance. And dissonance is when we have 2 voices that are completely clashing and the tones are uniquely different. And there's no attempt to bring them into an alignment, even if the tones are completely different and unique. And resonance is that way of bringing the tones together in a way that creates this beautiful meshing of sounds, but doesn't lose the unique individuality of the voices. And so that harmony triad, I feel like as a student, I feel like I've been able to find harmony within myself and harmony with others. So talk about how the harmony triad helps you come to that own harmony within yourself and with other people.
Well, yeah, and some of us even like dissonant chords, though. But okay, I think I'd like to share a screen here, Danielle, and this might help to have a visual. And let's see how I can do this right here. So, when I first learned harmony, I learned from Dr. Jerry Wagner, and I learned these personality styles according to Enneagram spectrum. And there are a lot of names that you can use, right? Of course, the effective person, other people call threes the achiever. If you're a 4, some people might call you the creative. But these are Dr. Wagner's styles, which I love his language, style rather than type. Because one of the things I never liked about the Enneagram was considering that I was a type. Anyway, so, when you look at Dr. Wagner's test, it is the process Enneagram, the typical, the classic traditional Enneagram. But when you look at the harmony triads, you're actually looking at a model for integrating head, heart, and gut for every style, and not just the 3, 6, 9 in the middle. And, then I began to study with Dr. David Daniels. And one of the things he said was that harmony triads was the key to development. Although he hadn't done a whole lot of work with it yet, he made that statement. He put a map up and I was like, oh my gosh, this is, it's the eureka moment, and felt like I actually was beginning to see the terrain of my own soul. And I know that all models are incomplete. Can we all just say that's true? They're all incomplete, but some are helpful for development and transformation. So when I look at the arrow theory, I think that is phenomenal. I think that is diagnostic. When we take a look at how we come out on the WEPS test that Dr. Wagner has written and has been identified as legitimately scientific and psychological in all of its foundations, we say, yeah, that's true of me. When I'm under stress, I go here. When I'm integrated, I go here, that kind of thing. But harmony is a different invitation. It's an intentional invitation to open up to more that God has for us. And, I won't go into this, but in our book, Dr. Wagner says, if you want to know what to do next with the Enneagram, read this book, because it is actually moving you on into the kind of practices that can open you to transformation. And I started writing with Motions of the Soul and presented that to the IEA Global in 2012. And then out of that, our friends asked if I would write a book with them, which we did, where we centered on looking in both of those books on the 3 centers of intelligence, but then opening to more. And then saying, okay, so, we want to respect the fact that gut people react instinctively. They know in their gut or their bones whether they like someone. They trust their gut more than anything or anyone else. And it makes it easy for them to either jump in, act out, or pull out without, giving it a second thought. And they might, in the heat of things, dismiss their head and their heart. Could you guys say that's true, gut people? Is that possible? You might dismiss your head and heart. And then, the emotional types, they trust their heart connection more than anything else. That is me. Like, it is about connection for me, and relying on feelings and concerns for others to guide us. Do they like me? Do they like me now? Do you guys like me right now? I just need to know. Can you give me a thumbs up so I can keep going? And when connection is broken, they'll work like mad to regain affection, approval, and connection, and might dismiss reactions from the head, or the gut as not me. So then there's our head people that they'll move into their head and dismiss heart, where love becomes a concept. And they might, have to think about it before they say, I love you. They might say, I think I feel. And so they're, working with mental activity pros and cons and things like that, and could dismiss heart people as lightweights or gut people as reactionary. So I don't know, Michelle, I know you're a head person, so you might say amen to that or not. But the work of the harmony is that without spiritual rhythms that integrate the broken and dismissed parts of ourselves, we play one string of the instrument. That is us instead of a full chord. So head, heart, and gut, thinking, feeling, doing, right? And when we're on our edge, stuck in our type, you see the vices. And when we're centered, you find that you have access to all that is you from even all 9 styles, because you're not out on your edge. So what happened was, then we wrote, when I wrote Motions of the Soul, I gave 3 names to each style that actually could become a mantra or a prayer of types, so that people could open up to more that is them, giving them the 3 names for their own style connected to head, heart, and gut. And then, I'll stop for just a minute, because I want to show you a couple of things that I think might generate some questions. Danielle, is that okay?
Yes, I would love for you to do that. And I would love for you to think about, if we have time, for you to share your favorite transformation story that you've witnessed through the Harmony Triads. And go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Well, I could even just do that really quick so I don't forget. There are so many stories, and some are even on this call, but you'll be seeing a video come out on our website pretty soon from our friend Lene Spicer. And she was in the last training and got on the map, which I put on the floor. And I help people discern by standing on each of the numbers in their own harmony triad. If they have a question, if it's about vocation, if it's about next steps, if it's a question about who they are. And she had a moment, man. She said that, and this is a woman who's been a Christ follower in her own faith tradition for many, many years, has done the work of her own spiritual transformation, but this integrated her psychology. Rather than creating spiritual bypass, this opened her up to her psychology, her spirituality, and her body knowing by getting on the map. And she just has said she can't believe the kind of clarity, to coin your term there, Danielle, that she's been walking in as she's opened up to her 147 harmony triad. So that's a quick little note that's actually coming out on video in this next month. And you'll love her story.
Absolutely. And for those who are listening to that word spiritual bypassing, I just dropped a quick definition in the chat, just so that we can all be on the same page about how sometimes we overutilize spirituality when we don't want to face, or when we are afraid to kind of explore the deeper dimensions of our mentations, of our physical actions, and our experiences. So Claire, I would love for you to talk about how this looks in action, because I love that stop process. So how does that STOP process help us to work through our Enneagram Harmony triadic selves in order to facilitate our own transformation?
Yeah, stop, see, triggers, open, presence, see, triggers, open, presence, see, triggers, open, presence. So for instance, if you look at harmony inspired in this diagram that we've created, my great graphic designer, Stacy Livingston, who's also certified in Motions of the Soul with us. What we look at is when Ginger says there are competency types, intensity types, and optimistic types. If you look at your harmony triad, you can have access to competency, intensity, and optimism. If you stop, if you see the trigger open to presence, if you don't just move in your go-to automatic self of I've got to be competent, right? And there's no opening to the kind of intensity that the 8, the 6, and the 4 bring, and the optimism that the 9, the 2, and the 7 bring. Along with that, we'll look at Karen Horney. So with toward, away, and against movements, inspired by Karen Horney, and Jerome Wagner has written a great article on this, but then we put it together with harmony. And we said, sometimes you need to move toward, sometimes you need to move away, sometimes you need to move against. But if you don't stop and see your trigger and open to presence, you'll do your automatic response of, I just got to move toward. I got to keep moving toward. I've got to keep making the kind of connection or helping or futuring of the 2, 3, and 7. Or sometimes, man, you got to go away, like the 9 and the 4 going down and in, or the 5 moving back and observing. And then lastly, the 8, the 1, and the 6, sometimes, friends, we all need to move against. The 1s need to say, this needs to be reformed, right? The 8s need to say, this is unjust, somebody's being used. And the 6s need to say, hey, I'm moving against this with some questions. I need to know more about that. I need to clarify that. I need to know why you're doing that. And then you can stop. You can see, trigger, open, presence. Does that answer your question? Oh, wait, one more, maybe. Oh, yeah, one more, okay? Just one more.
Absolutely.
All right, so this might be my favorite right here. Well, it might if I can go to it. Monica wants to come in. Come on in, Monica. Okay, so why am I? Okay, so we looked at the brain-based Enneagram last month, and if you haven't seen it, go watch Jerome Libba. He took the Enneagram and flipped it upside down and then worked on brain science, putting the 8, 9, 1 on the bottom that are normally on the top, and saying they are connected with the brain stem, and that the 5, 6, and 7 are connected with the left brain. And this is functional neurobiology, friends. This is science. And that the 2, the 3, and the 4 are right-brained. So what does that mean for us in harmony? Well, look at that. You can actually have harmony and be whole-brained. You don't have to just say, well, I'm a right-brained person. I can't think through that logically. Or, hey, I'm a brainstem person. I just move with the gut and I make those decisions and I get it, I get it done, or I don't get it done and I dig in like a 9. So we need to be whole-brained. We need to be in harmony in a world that is so dissonant, in a world that is really lacking harmony. So Enneagram Harmony takes all of these beautiful, functional neurobiology, the Hornevian work and Jerry Wagner's psychological work, and looking at Ginger's work with business, and saying, hey, friends, we could actually bring harmony to the world if we get unstuck.
Claire, I love that. And I'm also reminded of how our mutual teacher, Marianne Gilbert, talks about metabolizing energy, right? And how we have these pockets of overwhelm that we absorb when we are triggered and we experience intense emotions, when we experience ways that we are disrupted, that false self's needs are disrupted. And so when I think about your journey through multiple sclerosis and your journey out of multiple sclerosis, I'm just so curious about what the actual feeling of those pockets of overwhelm leaving your body through you going to your 9 and rest, right? And the way that you began to investigate with your 6, and the way that you even stepped into the light when it was necessary in your 3. What was that experience like for you personally, to experience that kind of liberation, and the map of the harmony triads being your compass?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, this means so much to all of us, because in my work with trafficking survivors and working with organizations all over the state around human trafficking, I learned from our trauma therapists that the body keeps the score. The body keeps the score. That's a great book. Y'all ought to get it. And what we find is that in the cells of our body, we have a story that is there before the executive function ever can create, sense of it. But the body knows. And what I discovered was in the cells of my body, I'm not going to say I wore off my myelin sheath as a workaholic, but one could wonder about such a thing, right? And I think that when I was invited to pay attention to my 9, this part of my body that could offer my body relief, this part of my body that naturally could move to sloth, like could actually not sloth, lazy, not talking about that, but sloth, where I could slow down the drivenness of my, of my human existence. So what happened for me is practicing things like body scanning, which we do a lot in our training, body prayers, which we do a lot in our, our certification course, to awaken the body, to welcome the body's wisdom, to say yes to what the body might be trying to say, because the body has kept the score. And when we welcome that part of us, and we can actually bring intentional attention to that part of our body through whether it's breath practices, body work, somatic experience in therapy, however that might flesh out for you, we can move trauma through the body and hardwire, because of course, when we are being transformed, we are whole brained individuals, and we have neurons in our gut and in our heart, right? In our mind, our whole mind, which can change the brain, the organ of the brain. So that's a lot, and we'd need a whole thing on that. But that certainly is the work of Harmony Triads, is because if you took a look at your test via Dr. Wagner, and you looked at what you were dismissing, for some of you, it may be your body center in your harmony, not necessarily a body center type that is in the body center. And I can answer questions about that. What's the difference between tri-type and harmony? Because that's a big question if somebody has it, but I won't answer it if nobody's asking. Because you can be high on one body type that might be in the same place. So say, for instance, you're a 4, but your high body type is 8. Those are both intensity types. So what you need as a 4 is, or say it's, anyway, I can't get into all that because it would just take us down a rabbit hole. But let's just say this, you need your harmony, 147-369-258, so that you have moving toward, away, against, and welcoming that particular energy from your head, your heart, or your gut that can help you stop, see, triggers, open, presence.
Well, and I just think about the imagery of this rut that we're stuck in with our behavior, right? And this long, deep track of behavior that we keep trying over and over again, and it's not giving us the results that we want, but we can't get out of the rut. And then I'm thinking about these dendrites that we have in our brains, these long, narrow pathways of information, right? And how they get myelinated, right? And so these harmony triads and the understanding of the harmony triads is a way to literally get out of the ruts in our brains, right? And so as we explore this, I want to encourage you to get your questions ready for Claire. We got about 20-ish more minutes to really be able to help get our ruts unrutted in our brains and change our psychological associations. And so I want to welcome you either in the chat or to raise your hand and come off mute and ask some questions of Claire while we have her, because I really see that there are some possibilities for folks to really move toward the kind of transformation that they've been waiting for. So what questions do you have for Claire? And I have 1,000. So if we have some moments of silence, I'm going to join the question and answer pool myself. But I want to give you all some opportunities as well. Do I see any hands raised? Any hands raised? Claire, I have been on that map. I have done the dance of the harmony triads. And one of the things that I personally experienced was a noticing of how deeply conditions were a part of my psyche. And so moving from my 1 to my 4 to my 7 and tapping into the unconditional spontaneity and joy of the 7 helped me to begin to remove the conditions of my own joy, right? And to seek joy, even if I didn't feel like I had earned it that day, which then opened me up to more opportunities to have more joy, right? And so just talk about even that for the type 1. Like what happened when I walked through that map and when I was able to stop, right? And see the trigger of the conditional mindset and then open and become present to it. Like what happens inside a person when they do the kinesthetic movement of walking around?
Well, and I want to make sure Rosemary had her hand raised.
Did she? Okay.
She sure did. I'll just say that that kinesthetic learning of standing on the map, we have cards that we give you as you stand on the map that give you a way to look at how you could open up. There's something that happens in the energy of your body. We used to paint the saints with a halo and signifying their energeto, which is a Greek word that is used in our sacred text, in my faith tradition. And it's really talking about the energy that you open up to when you can love with head, heart, and gut, with thinking, feeling, and doing, because you are more than your type, which was what we wanted to name the book, by the way, but they thought it sounded like a dating book. And Varsity Press said, no, spiritual rhythms for the Enneagram, not more than your type, because people think you're trying to match.com them. So anyway, I say that to say, because you are more than your type. We have all 9 styles on the inside of us in one way or another. And then opening with this kind of harmony, intentionality without too much, so let's see what happens with Rosemary.
Yeah, Rosemary, I didn't see your hand. I apologize.
Hi,
Please,
guys. So good
ask us your question.
So good to see you and be with you as always. I just wanted to start out really quickly by saying that I have had really good teachers over 20 years. I got certified with Jerry Wagner, studied with Helen Palmer at the Seneca in Chicago, and David Daniels. We've had beautiful teachers come to Loyola, and I've had a lot of good education. I have not done this, and I am meant to be here because I love this. I'm a Libra. I love harmony. I love balance. I am going to take it. So FYI, that right out the gate. My main question was, and I put it in the chat, for those of us who really haven't been conscious so much about specific harmony triad, I kind of want to believe that we do it without maybe all that. We'll do it better if we take the training, but there's an osmosis or a kind of a thing that I feel like I do, given that in my chart 4 is my secondary, what I would call the secondary type, and it's a close to 7, maybe that's why sometimes I look like a darker 7 to people, but or a serious 7. But I kind of love when I work with people too, and I show them, because I always work from Jerry's form for 19 years I have. So I show them, specifically, like, do you see how important the second type is to who you are? So my question, without going on and on, is that, can we, by osmosis or even with a little bit of consciousness around this, get more? I feel like I have, but maybe I need some affirmation on that. I don't know.
Well, I love your question, and I'll try to answer it in a way that feels like I'm actually answering it. Sometimes I might go places we don't need to go, but okay. So let's take this for just instance with Rosemary, who is a style 7. I would ask you, in the training, we do a lot of work around the dismissed childlike self. For those who know Sandra Maitre, she did work with the dismissed soul child and worked with the process Enneagram and the traditional Enneagram. When I wrote about the dismissed childlike self and motions of the soul, and then further in and spiritual rhythms for the Enneagram, we really said we think we can point to something very significant that you may have dismissed in your harmony. Some people will say, oh my gosh, yes, I'm a 7 and my 4 comes up high. It's the 1 that is really low that I've dismissed or undernourished, or that my 7 was applauded so much, I didn't need my 4 or 1 that much. So we could say undernourished, we could say dismissed, we could say, childlike crisis, put you in a position where you let go of a part of yourself. So we would just say that within or beneath every 7, okay, would be an engaging, 7 is a self-critical, judgmental, resentful, uptight 1 who needs perfection, who wants to control everything and can't seem to get it right. Or beneath every optimistic, have a good time, pain avoidant 7 is a deep fear of being flawed, soulful little 4 who's anxious about your worth and being abandoned. So I would sit with you. I'd look at your WEPs, right? And I'd look at our, as I said, we do a, let me put this up again. We do a little interpretation with harmony, with ours, and and so we would say, what happened here? What happened to you? What was applauded? What was undernourished? And so I'd take your little scores and say, oh, so you're a type such and such, and here's what you got going with 147, and here's how you came out on Jerry's test. And then I'd say, so, your dominant score might be this, but how can we open to more? So does that help, Rosemary?
Yeah, I guess I guess the answer to the question is kind of forming too as you're speaking and as I heard my own question, which is, of course, things can happen by osmosis. Of course, Jerry's test is comprehensive. Of course, there's so many layers. I mean, I teach in a very positive way. I tell everybody they are resourceful. They are already resourceful. But they're sitting in those chairs or sitting on the Zoom because they want to become more resourceful. And by resourceful, I mean reconnected to their source. And I teach very positively that way. And when I look at that, oh my goodness. So I clearly have work to do, because when I look at that, I just want to go like, well, when I'm in my worst, I'm like that, but I'm really not like that.
And let me just finish that out with saying this, Rosemary. You're an optimism type. Of course, you teach it in a positive way. So there's that, right? And you are more than your type. So opening up to, letting even some of the difficulty of sitting with our pain, the pain of always wanting to do something competently for me as a 3, optimistically for you as a 7, right? Intensely for someone as an 8, a 4, a 6. So that's the work we do. We have people write their autobiography based on where they may have let go of that little part of themselves, the head, the heart, or the gut, where they overplayed their good stuff because it was applauded or needed or survival, as Danielle says. Thank you so much, Rosemary. Anybody else with a question?
While we're waiting on other folks to respond with their questions, I just want to bring your attention to the chat. Whenever Claire has referenced something, we've dropped the links in the chat. So that Webb's test that she mentioned, the Enneagram, the Wagner Enneagram personality style scales questionnaires there, as well as some of the books that she referenced, as well as her actual book, the book that we are learning from right now. And so I want to invite you to click around as you prepare your questions. But who has a question?
I've got a question, Claire.
Yes, who am I speaking to?
Kelly.
Hello, Kelly. I found you.
Hi. So This is not new information for me, but for some reason today when you were talking about the different parts of the brain, something just clicked for me. So I have a question about that. So I am doing some body work right now. I'm a 4, so I'm a heart person. Really was undernourishing my gut and actually probably everything else. So I'm doing some really intentional body work right now. One of the questions I have is about the, I can't even think how to phrase it, the brain, the way your body responds, and even I'm wondering if there are specific connections. So I'm going to use my husband as an example. My husband is an 8, so he's a gut person. And he actually had, a couple of years ago, he had clots that went into his brain stem and had to have them removed. And I don't know why, but today is the first time it actually occurred to me that literally his brain stem was the part of his body that was attacked. Yeah. And I'm just wondering if there's if you've in your work noticed any actual connections like that in our physical manifestations of the body keeping the score. I know it's not a black and white 1-to-1, but I just, as I think about my own brain and the way I respond to things and the ways that I'm trying to, make new ruts and grooves, if there are specific, things for different parts of the brain. Does that make sense?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I love the question. And what I would say is that's a great question for each of us to ask ourselves. How has our body been showing up in times of stress? How, where do we notice we carry pain or anxiety? Is it gastrointestinal? Is it I've been in the ER with thinking I'm having a heart attack. It's never been a heart attack. And so where does your body hold the trauma? And how is it, what part of the brain is that connected to? So these are great questions. They can really lead us into intentional attention. Like, okay, so I know if I'm a gut person, my brain stem is my automatic way of being in the world, relationally, in all of my life. And so how can I help calm that intensity down? Where fight, flight, freeze, fawn, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, So you can see that in the 8, the 9, and the 1. And I think there is this part of just asking ourselves the question. We can do research on it, but one of the things I've learned from my favorite Dr. Jerome Wagner, is he'll say, well, here's some stuff I'm collecting. It could be wrong, but I have noticed that there are people who name things that are connected both to their automatic self responses in the world and the place where they have been in pain in their body. And then when we can start to relax that, see the trigger, like that gets me moving in my pain body, and then open to all 3 centers of intelligence, head, heart, and gut. And then we can become present to what we need, what we, who we need it from, right? Rather than clinging, grasping, forcing, trying to make our way. And that just creates space that's super graced and healthy. Does that make sense?
Very much so for me. Yeah. Thank you.
Wanted to say thank you to Crystal Cooper, who said this is very insightful and she had to drop off. So Crystal, when you watch this recording over and over again, I want you to know that we saw your comment and we appreciate you joining us. Who else has a question? We have a few more minutes before we wrap up.
Michelle.
We have Michelle, and then I saw Diana Otterbacher raising her hand. So Michelle and then Diane.
Hi, I guess I would like to just continue the discussion of the last two people who talked. Again, for me, this whole idea of the harmony and, disconnecting to some parts is not new, but I'm having this aha. As a 5, I totally know that I totally disconnect from my body. That is not news to me. And I've started that reflection and working on it and trying to figure what else I can do. And you gave some good ideas. I already wrote down the Body Keeps the Score book and the idea about the autobiography, the stuff about the dismissed child slides, to revisit that. I was just wondering if you have any other practical suggestions, resources, authors, books, activities, apps, anything else that is sort of, I know what I need to do, but some resources to help me get there.
Yeah, Michelle, thank you. We in this one, we have Mind Body Harmony, and we guide you in a body scan. I had a guy who was really high on 7 and 5 in my last training. And when he wrote his autobiography, he discovered that he needed to do his body scan in a hammock, so that he was actually held and encased, and so that he couldn't move and get out of it, kind of a thing. He said that he was laying in the hammock and he noticed while he was doing the body scan that his toes were perched forward like this, like in a way to run, like in a way to leap and get out of the situation of this body scan. He said just that knowing of his body has been an invitation for him to notice when his toes are trying to get him out of a situation. So, he leads with 7. He's got a lot of 5 going on, right? So he's all up in his head, but his body keeps the score as a how the heck do I get out of here when it's painful, or, I don't feel safe and secure, which is, head stuff. And he said just that body scanning made him aware to practice that in his everyday life. He can see when his toes are trying to lead him out. So for each of us, we would notice something different about our body. If we actually, as Kurt Thompson would say, Anatomy of the Soul, fabulous book. And he talks about, the fact that as we notice our responses, and as Danielle just said, we're creating these new neuro pathways, so that if you're practicing it on the regular through your own contemplative practices, it'll come up and you'll notice it, because you noticed it when you were just, giving yourself to the practice, and you didn't have to get to a meeting or away from a meeting, or to, connect with a person and get away from a person. So it actually, because you've been practicing that on the regular, it's showing up for you. You know what your body's doing because it's giving you some hints.
Okay, thank you. And I have the body scan. I just haven't thought about that in a while, so I will revisit.
Oh, I love that you said I haven't thought about it. So I'm going to say, that's your 5, right? So inviting you to just experience it, Michelle. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Diana, quickly, what was your question? We want to make sure we get you before we sign off.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for this understanding of the spiritual bypassing, because I experienced that recently. I've been giving introductions to the Enneagram for about 8 years now. And I recently had a situation where when people took the WEPS test, which I love, and I always have everybody take that test, and I have a question if whether or not people, because I give, like I have one session and then I give them an overview and then I have them take the test. And is it possible that people, because of their spiritual bypassing, will get skewed test results because they want so bad to be seen as a certain person? And I just want to say that the 2 people in particular that happened recently is they're really serious gung-ho Christians, and they're trying so hard. And to me, they're 3s. They are total 3s. but they want to be twos. And they are threes with two wings, but they just, and they enjoy the helping, but they help with that three energy. And so I just feel like, they're not really accepting themselves for who they really are.
Yeah. And Diana, you're a retired Methodist pastor, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so, here's the reality. We learned how to do spiritual bypass, right? I mean, we've been trained in spiritual bypass to say, well, God will take care of that, or, I am, all of those kinds of things. We're less inclined to talk about the I am nots.
Yes.
I am a child of God. I am the beloved of God. Of course we are. I am, I am strong. I am, invincible. I am. But we many times, because the Enneagram actually will reveal where we are by the pain of discovering our number. We might want to buy a vowel, another number, anything other than what we really are. And confess that away with, with sacred text, with all of, we use Jesus as our, in our faith tradition, Diana. Others might name it differently in their faith tradition, but we use Jesus to do spiritual bypass, and call it good. So I love that you're asking that question. And there is real compassion we need for one another, because so my hero Jesus said it this way. He said, I would tell you more right now, but you can't handle it. But when my spirit comes, all things will be revealed, and not like in a day, not like in a moment, but over a lifetime. All of us are coming to ourselves. We're coming home to our true selves. And so maybe they're just not ready to accept the threeness, because they're ashamed. I mean, I didn't want to tell anybody that my defense mechanism was identification. I'm going to be like you to make me okay for you. Right. Wow. I didn't want to tell, I didn't want to do that. But until we are willing to suffer the pain and the humiliation of what is really true about us, there is no transforming power. There's got to be death before life. And yeah.
I think that is a perfect and appropriate place for us to pause. I want to thank you so much, Claire, for your transparency, for your work, for your years and years of experimenting on yourself first, and then sharing the fruit of your own inner work with others around you through spiritual direction, through consultation, through pastoring, and through teaching. I want to invite everyone to go check out the newsletter that I just dropped in the chat. Claire has a Pay What You Can retreat coming up. Rosemary has a wonderful workshop coming up. I have a Confusion to Clarity workshop coming up. Lori Tate has a Enneagram from the men's perspective 5-part experience coming up. Send this link to anyone you want to understand their Enneagram type and bond over that journey together.
And Danielle,
yes.
And let's not forget to mention Dr. Wagner's training. The link
That's
is
right.
there as well. And this training for certification with the IEA.
Absolutely. That both of those trainings will get you the hours that you need to become an accredited professional with the IEA, which is really helpful as you continue to expand your working with and teaching with people across the globe. So with that, we want to say thank you. We are grateful that you've joined us and spent your midday with us, and we will see you next time. Thank you again, Claire.
Thank you, Danielle.
I see your comments. Thank you, Leanne. Thank you, Brunelle. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. You're wonderful. I think Sally just came in because the time in Egypt is not the same as here. And now
Will this
Oh,
all be in the
well,
chat, you guys, all this info?
yes.
Yes.
So when we say goodbye right now, we can find it where? I'm sorry.
Erica will upload it on YouTube. And where is that right, Danielle? Is that how?
Yes, Erica will upload it on YouTube with all the accompanying links as well. It'll be in the links will be in the information section of the YouTube comments.
Okay, thank you. I'm just gonna copy and paste it.
Excellent. That will be the fastest way to get it.
That'll work, right? Come on, come on, come on, come on.
All right, y'all.
Thank you, dear. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.